Welcome to Jim and Omar's Business Club, where the United Way is less a philosophy and more a sat-nav route to the end of your football career. New players, similar results. Money for staff? Every other season, if you mean compo for coaches. Anything for the ordinary fan, Sir Jim? Yes, a free shower, if you're in the right part of the ground and it rains. Well, it's metaphorically pissing down for United right now. Fortunately, we've got the sunshine smiles of Carly from the Fans Forum, Duncan from Must, and Pete from the prophetic bedsheet banner. 14 months of excuses and it's still crap, Tara Ruben. Now, that was in alphabetical order, but Pete, you've been going the longest. As a match-going fan, what value for money this season?
Well, you've got to say poor fare. As much as I enjoy every away trip, I still love following the Reds, the experience, the whole thing from start to finish. But of course, the footballs was probably been the worst. There's some of it under Van Gaal that was this bad. There was some of it under Dave Sexton that was this bad. But you'd have to go back to the season we got relegated, really. But hopefully the good times are coming. But not under Ruben, I'm afraid.
We keep hearing that, but the thing is you've been asked to stump up more as a supporter and you're being asked to put up with more stuff as a supporter, both at Old Trafford and in terms of trying to get to away games.
Yeah, we got some of our reduction in the OAP season ticket price. So we only got a quarter off instead of half after waiting all those years. Some fans were relocated, resited. Just a feeling that Ratcliffe and his crew don't really feel for the fans, don't get it, don't embrace it. Having said that, I do think, and I've been vocal about this, what the TRA have done at the Stretford end is superb, absolutely superb. And hopefully that'll go to the upper tier as well now that's standing. It really does look impressive. And having been a Stretford ender since, or was a Stretford ender from about the mid-60s, it's as good as it was then. The atmosphere and the visuals. Sadly, what we've not had is the football to really keep it alive all during the match. But I've been very impressed with that, very impressed.
Bold claim. Funny what happens when you embrace just a little bit of supporter culture, isn't it? You talked about relocations there. Carly, in the summer, you told us there'd be a different type of fan around the benches. Well, I don't know if you've been on the internet lately, but I've been watching something called social media, and it would appear that you made a massive understatement.
In what sense?
They're not just a different type of fan, are they? They're a very different type of fan, some of them.
I think I know that the types of videos that you mean. Yeah, there's been some stuff doing the rounds this week, last week, I think, of TikTok videos of people going so far as getting on the pitch, I believe, having paid for some executive seats around the dugouts. And while I think people piling onto individuals who've bought those seats probably isn't the best use of anyone's time, I think some people have bought those seats, you know, in good faith, wanting to go to a match, wanting to get a sort of experience. But the fact that the club have been behind this, shifting people out to put people who seem to be more bothered about making TikTok videos than actually sort of watching the match into those seats, I think that's where the problem lies, really. We're coming up to that point in the season now where we're going to be starting to talk about season ticket renewals. The next Fans Forum meetings will be in March. And that's usually when we start talking about, you know, what's going to be happening with renewals and forced seat relocation. So we had last season, there were the forced relocations from around the South Stand. The season before, there was that situation where more people were shifted out of the South Stand, including Norman Whiteside, if you remember, because they allegedly wanted to consolidate the hospitality in one area rather than having hospitality all around the ground, which a policy they've completely got rid of now, and they're shoving hospitality in wherever they can. So I think we might see more of those relocations. But yeah, it has had a massive increase, I think, on atmosphere. And, you know, Pete was talking about the reduction in OAP tickets, and we had that last season. We also had people, the season ticket amnesty with, well, the non-season ticket amnesty with people having to pass the ID checks and being unable to pass on season tickets to sort of family members and stuff. And, you know, you see that in action this season in sort of small ways. Like the seat that I usually sit in the Stretford end, there used to be this really lovely old fella that sat on the end of the row, and you'd always have to sort of like get past him to sort of get him. But he was, every time someone had to go past him, he was really jolly, and he was like, "Hey, you're right, good to see you," sort of thing. And he's not there this season. And I don't know why. I don't know if it's because of the, the reduction in prices, reduction in the discounts for OAPs. He definitely would have been affected by that, or whether he's, just been unable to go for other reasons. But you see those sort of like little people that you see with all those those years of history and those stories just sort of slowly start disappearing from your match day experience. And it just makes match days that little bit, less familiar and more impersonal. So I think everyone sees that in sort of different ways, sort of, no matter where you're sitting in the ground.
Is this what people are saying to you, Duncan?
Yeah, I mean, a good mate of mine, Peter Hargreaves, that I don't know whether Pete knows him or not. And I was amazed. I met him at a friend's funeral this year, and he said, "It's my last season." Obviously last season this was. And he's gone after his first match was in 1954. And that was down to the loss of the full discount on the seniors tickets. And I could never have imagined it. Pete was sort of known as Mr. United to a lot of us, someone I've worked with over many years, and very sad about that. And, we did think about, should we try and whip round and pay for it? But the reality was he was just so disillusioned with it that, he didn't want kind of charity. He just wanted the club to treat him in a way that respected his support and his family support. I mean, he went back to Newton Heath through his family, his grandfather and his father. So it was a horrendous story, really. And, I understand the sort of drive for revenue in some senses, but I think the way you handle these things sensitively, because really what it's about for people that are affected by things like relocations or loss of discount, is feeling that they're valued by the club. And I think that was the problem, that he just felt like, there was a dismissive attitude to his loyalty and his family's loyalties. So quite a depressing thing, really, to see people like that disappear. I hate that. I hated it in 2005. We lost a lot of people then, went to FC United and stopped going. And we just see different cuts that take away another swathe of the fan base.
I didn't realise he'd stopped going. He was really prominent in the late 90s when all the United supporters groups got real momentum. I hadn't even realised he stopped going. Like you say, he would always talk about his dad going in the 30s and stuff like that. So incredible. You put out a survey before, I think, was it the Bournemouth game? Because I remember my little brother saying, "I'm going in the ground early because the queues have got so bad," and I think it chimed with that. He'd filled it in. What was the point of that, and what have you got back? I know you haven't assessed it properly yet, but are there any headlines from it?
Yeah, I mean, I should say Carly was out there observing the turnstiles herself in person, and along with some other colleagues from the fans forum. I mean, what we got back was 497 responses, which isn't huge, but, I think it's meaningful in terms of drawing conclusions, because what we were asking for was essentially, what was your experience? How long did you wait at the turnstile? We'd had quite a few reports over the time, the games leading up to Bournemouth, where people have been waiting incredibly long times to get in. Now, what I think is particularly useful about this, and I've only looked at the early results so far, is being able to pinpoint the areas where it's worst. Because I did actually tweet on the night after the game saying, actually, it was really good. They must have changed something, and got a lot of flack on Twitter from people saying, "Oh, you're in bed with the club," or something like this. But that was just my experience at our turnstile. It had massively improved. But then I looked at the data at other places, and, there were real problems that we were wrong along the Stretford end in particular, other pinch points, and lots of really good anecdotal stuff that people have given us. And we've compiled a report, which we've already shared with the club tonight. And so we've sent that through to the operations director for them to look at. And there's good suggestions in from fans about how to improve things. And you can imagine the sort of issues. I mean, the two main things obviously are the efficiency of the search process, the efficiency of the queue management, and then the problems with the NFC turnstile scanning, which is partly people not understanding it, or the way the scanners are, the way they look like you're meant to scan a barcode, which you obviously did previously, and so it still confuses people where to put your phone. And these things sound kind of trivial, but one person who waits an extra 30 seconds or a minute suddenly stops that flow, and that has a massive impact. So hopefully we'll get some positive outcomes from that. I mean, the way we've tried to work with the club is to try and be positive about, not just criticise, but say, look, we're going to try and work with you for what particularly on issues that affect supporters. These are the issues that fans are seeing. We want you to look at them, take them on board, and implement changes where you can. And I can give an example that we saw at our turnstile where we've got a problem with people pushing into the queue. And of course, when you're in a long queue, it's exceptionally frustrating when you can see people pushing in at the front. Creates a lot of animosity between fans, which is the exact opposite of what we want. Camaraderie and atmosphere. And so they agreed to put some extra barriers along, and they've done that at some of the other turnstiles, which means that when you're in the queue, you're not going to get, waiting because exceptionally long times because other people are pushing in. I think there's going to be learning points for the stewards, certainly from the comments that I've seen. And we'll discuss this. I haven't shared it yet with other colleagues on the fans forum, but we'll certainly discuss that and use that as ammunition, if you want to call it that, for discussions with the club as we see how the season progresses and whether things improve or not.
Luckily, though, I guess at least nobody's coming to you with any issues regarding away games.
Well, I mean, the main away game issues that I've seen, because I'm obviously taken over the sort of Islo service after Ian Sterling died, and I've seen a lot of sanctions around away ticket issues where people have transferred tickets outside the system for a variety of different reasons. One of the problems we've got in particular with away ticketing is we do have a transfer system, so you can transfer an away ticket to someone else who's eligible. And that's actually a pretty good system compared with a lot of other clubs that don't allow this. And I think it's really beneficial because I think it's what creates the sort of network of community of fans and the camaraderie that we want in our away support. A lot of that's about building up networks and, so that when you can't go yourself, you look to pass it on to a mate that rather than sending it back to the club and letting them randomly distribute it. I think that's actually a good thing. But one of the issues with the transfers is if you don't do it officially and your ticket is picked up for whatever reason, it doesn't scan or the club's doing checks, then up until this season, certainly you were there's a reasonable chance that you would actually lose your season ticket as a sanction. That's one of the issues that we've raised and we've been looking at through a subgroup on the fans forum. We think that's far too harsh a sanction unless you're actually, there's hard evidence that you've touted it at an inflated price. If you've just passed it to someone through an unofficial mechanism or essentially not done it to someone who's an eligible supporter, I think the sanction should be something much more moderate, whether that's being ineligible to apply for away tickets for a period of time, something like that. And it looks like the club have taken that on board. It's not been officially agreed, but what I've seen is cases where the club have agreed to downgrade these sanctions. And I think it's really important to me because the sanction cases that really impact me when I'm trying to help supporters who come to ask for advice are where they're losing their season ticket and the club call that a 1-year suspension of your ticket or a 1-year ban. But of course, if you lose your ticket for a year, you can't renew it. And that means you've lost your season ticket, essentially. That means you've broken up your group of mates you might sit with or whatever. You will never get that back, because you'll go to the back of the waiting list. And then if you get a ticket, it won't be in the same area. So my feeling was that the club didn't understand the impact that would have on an individual supporter. If you lose your season ticket like that, it's absolutely kind of life-changing for a supporter. It breaks up all those relationships you've got. I think they've listened to that, and I'm hoping, and certainly Carly's been involved in some of the discussions as well that we've had through the fans forum. I think we've got a much more effective fans forum than we've ever had. It's improved year by year for the last 4 or 5 years, certainly. We've got some really good people on there that are great advocates for supporters. And I know the fans forum has in the past been sort of derided to some degree, but I think there's some really good people on there that are on there for the right reasons, hold the club to account, but are reasonable about it as well, understand the pressures on the club and the staff in the club. You look at the ticket office, the budget cuts they've had, they've got massive challenges as well. So I think it's about taking a balanced view and just trying to get the club to listen to reason and listen to the things that actually are in their interest to listen to. We want happy supporters. We want a good support. We want good atmosphere. And they want that as well. And there are compromises on revenue with ticketing and so on, but there's plenty of areas where we can get a better result without coming into the conflict over the areas where they've got pressure on in terms of finances. So, I'm really positive about what the Fans Forum is achieving in recent years, and certainly we've been frustrated at times, but I think overall we've made some really good impacts in terms of influencing the club.
Well done, Carly. You're going to fix it all, are you?
Jesus Christ, where would you even begin? No, I think this, I think everyone would like to see us like going in all gung ho and just like absolutely, metaphorically turning the tables over in the temple. And we could do that, but then we would be just stuck on the outside, back to square one with no degree of influence. I think some of the biggest things that we've achieved have been those individual cases where we've, members of the Fans Forum, the most satisfying things have been where we get involved with like individual cases where, families were getting season tickets taken off them, through the ID checks last year, or, particular things have happened, people have been sanctioned, and then you get to sort of support them through that and see it get overturned, and then potentially have an impact on a minor element of the policy around why that thing happened in the first place. And I think it's we're never gonna, in the context of Manchester United being an enormous global football club and us just being a really small number of fans who have that direct relationship with the club, we're never going to be able to change all of the wrongs and ills that fans experience. But all we can do, and what I think we do really well, is just chip slowly at individual cases and small elements of policy to try and stop the sort of exit from the club of fans from being just a mass exodus. And I think there are so many, we've already touched on here that there are so many great people that end up not coming to the games anymore because of some of these policies. If we can, we're never going to completely overturn everything and live in this fantastic utopia of low season ticket prices and a German model and all the rest of it, as much as we would love to. But what we can do is try and preserve what we've got and make it easier for people, youngsters in particular, to come through and get access to the team. But I think, a lot of people just sort of think, well, it's all a completely pointless endeavour. And I mean, at points I feel like that. Certainly sometimes you do come away really demoralised. But I think there's enough positive movement in it to make what's going on worthwhile and to make those systems that we've got through the FAB and through the Fans Forum worthwhile to still be engaged in.
Do either of you think the transparency is coming back around the away ticket distribution?
Well, I mean, we're certainly asking for that. We are told it's a resource issue, and it's not up to me to argue the case around that. You'd think there are ways that you could generate that data. I mean, I think it was quite a victory. I mean, we pushed for that, of course, in the past, and actually they did agree to that because we said it will get rid of the conspiracy theories, if you like, or at least challenge them. And of course, because they've removed it, all those conspiratorial things come back. And I'm not saying there's nothing to them either, because, we know that there's pressure on the revenue. And so there's always a suspicion that when information is being denied, that is because they're doing something to generate extra revenue in some other form. But I think, what Carly was talking about in terms of the approach, I mean, you can use pressure, and I think, certainly protest and that sort of thing has its role and definitely helps to put things on the agenda. And then you can use influence. But in order to use influence, you have to do it in a way that they want to listen to you. Because if you're aggressive, and don't just use logic, then, they're not going to listen to your points, really. And so the way to maximize influence, and certainly what I've done in the last few years, whenever I've been in dialogue with the club, is I've always thought about it and tried to present things from a sort of, well, certainly from the club perspective, and I mean from a business perspective. So we make arguments about what the value is of having supporters on side and how that's good for the business. And I think they buy that anyway. But it's about strengthening those arguments about how important atmosphere is, how important it is to have fans that are happy rather than disgruntled. And, certainly we've made those arguments strongly, including with the new ownership element, tried to explain about, I think there's actually more you lose. If you lose the fans, it's not just the positive aspect of having good atmosphere. the negative is far greater. And actually, if you look at a point, and you've seen this more recently that I think I'd never seen, in the last 30 or 40 years, where you're getting fans in the stadium getting on the back of our own players to a degree that I'd never experienced before. And that's quite a depressing thing, because, I mean, we used to talk about the idea that you support the shirts. In other words, whoever's in the shirt doesn't matter. You support them because they've got the shirt on, and that's our job as supporters, because logically we want the team to win. So don't bring in your petty resentments against any individual players. And I've definitely seen that creep in where people are attacking players, and I think that's incredibly damaging, because it's not just that individual player, that will affect the whole team, because they'll all see it as we haven't got unconditional loyalty from our supporters. If you want to have teams that are not going to be unafraid to take risks and attack, then they've got to feel like the fans have got their back whatever happens. And I think that's when we perform the best. And you can certainly see when the crowd get on the players' backs, that's when they're frightened to take chances, they're frightened to take risks. And, and you get a dull attack, whereas you want people to be taking those risks, the way that we, have had our most glorious periods in our history of being where, we've been rampaging and people have been taking risks. And sometimes when it comes off, those are the greatest moments in football, aren't they? When those amazing, audacious things come off, sort of thing. So for me, getting that point over to the club and ensuring they understand it is so important. And I think we link that to a lot of the policies about what keep fans happy, whether it's policies around transfers of tickets or pricing or anything else. All of those things feed into fan sentiment. And, I've argued that the club should be looking at almost a fan sentiment index, so they understand how fans feel. And they should measure that as importantly as revenue when they're looking at things like ticket pricing or policies, and say, is this a good idea? Yes, it generates revenue, but what does it lose with a loss of fan sentiment? And I think when you look at the 66 quid ticket that they introduced mid-season, when you look at the reaction you got to that, and most of the people who were sort of pissed off about that and reacting to that were not people who were affected. It was season ticket holders, etc. And it's because they felt it was an attack on all of us, because we want to feel that we're all in it together. And if you're targeting one aspect, one element of our support, those fans who are having to pay those prices, it just felt bad in terms of the way the club viewed supporters. We want the club to view supporters as part of a family, not just, part of the revenue stream. Of course, we understand ticketing is an important part of the revenue stream, but you've got to balance that versus what fan sentiment brings to the club. And that's different from all your other commercial revenues, where we're very happy for them to drive those revenues as hard as they can. But ticket pricing and policy is something that has a price to pay if you push it too hard.
I think Sorry, Vance. I think one of the things that has been really positive about the Fans Forum, talking about sort of the way that fans behave and support each other collectively, I think there's been a few things that, particular people within the club have said where they've almost previously tried to play off different groups of fans against each other. So you've heard things about like, oh, well, the reason that we want to increase the minimum usage requirements for season ticket holders is because we want more members to be able to access tickets. Or the reason that we want to be really tight on people ineligible people receiving season tickets is because we want eligible season ticket holders to receive tickets. Or, we want to offer cup season ticket holders season tickets. So that's why we need to be really tight on X, Y, Z. And those people affected. So, if the club have said something about being tight on season ticket holders because they want to benefit members, we've had the people that represent members turning around and saying, actually, members don't want to get season tickets because you've booted some 80-year-old guy out of his seat that he sat in for 80 years. We're all fans together, and we want to generate an atmosphere where everyone is valued as a fan. You can't just play people off against each other, and we don't want to take tickets from people that have been excluded or jump in the grave of someone who can't go anymore because they can't afford it. And I think that's when that's happened, I think the club have been really surprised, and I think they really underestimate the level of togetherness that we have amongst fans. And it's that unity and that collectiveness that is, our most powerful asset. And when we stick together, and I think the Fans Forum has really shown the club, because there is a really, really strong collective element to it where everyone sort of supports each other, and whether, it's people backing up, things that have happened to disabled fans, or, fans from the LGBTQ groups, or, members backing up season ticket holders backing up over 65s, whatever it is. There's a real sense of, you can't divide us, and you can't sort of section off different elements of the fan base and say, well, they're going to get something if you sort of lose out. And I think that's definitely been a bit of an eye-opener for the club, and they've definitely changed the way that they behave, I think, towards particular sections of the fan base now, because they know that we've all got each other's backs, and we're not willing to, accept poor behaviour that might benefit our little section of the fan base, if it means that it's going to, disadvantage others.
Yeah, and I think, can I just comment on that as well? Because I think that's really important, and I think that's something that's changed in the Fans Forum in the last sort of 4 or 5 years, certainly. And a lot of that, I think, is because, certainly when I'd been involved in the Fans Forum previously, it was individuals who didn't really talk to each other. They were all there as individual reps, and we all talk now. We have pre-meetings, we have discussions all the time. And I think that communication between the fan members of the Fans Forum has created that kind of solidarity that means that we do back each other up, and we look after, so we'll all support someone who brings a case for, if it's about the disabled supporters or about members or whatever, rather than, because probably the majority of the people on there are representing season ticket holders or similar, seasonal facility holders, if you like. And so I think it's been massively important, and it's created that real solidarity amongst the members that's been really effective. And that, there's no feeling of divide and rule, which is obviously what the club would want if they wanted to, to pick off policies and so on. So, yeah, I think, and Carly's been one of the strongest advocates there, I think, has organised pre-meetings for Fans Forum, ahead of the meetings, that sort of thing, which has made us much more effective.
Well, you might be listening to this and have an opinion on that or anything else within reason. creamofmanchester1878@gmail.com, and we are on all the socials. And this episode is sponsored by Rent-A-Sport. They're a local company that supplies professional athletes on a short-term basis for anyone who needs quick exposure. So next time you find yourself without that crucial ticket for a United away, simply call Rent-A-Sport, and for a small fee, they'll send you Let's Play a Darts Player, something like that, and they'll ask for tickets online, and you might just find it's your lucky day. So Pete's back in the room. What do we want to happen? It's not impossible, Pete, that this season could be written off in a matter of weeks. Between now and August, what would fill you with happiness and confidence?
Well, on the field, it would simply be Manchester United playing in the traditional way. It's great, actually, since Monday when the sad news, in a way, was announced about Amrin. But people have recognised, of all ages, of all swathes in United's support, that the biggest thing that was missing is that lack of even going out to try and play expansive football, not going forward with power and pace. I've never known a manager's tactics be discussed as much, and I never really bought into all the talk in the early days when he came from Sporting. Not anything against Amrin, but I just thought, look, when you get on the pitch, you can call him what you want. Any lineup you want, you can call it what you will, but you've basically got defenders, midfield players and attackers. And United have always had people going down those wings with power and pace. Since the 40s, I've not watched them since the 40s, but I've watched them for about 2/3 of that, and they've always had one or two wingers. So the absence of that and the lack of it even being on the horizon, I think, brought a lot of the fans together in this week to say, we just want some of that back. We want to be entertained. When I first went to United, I was entertained in the 60s by some great players. I wanted United to win the games and win trophies, but it was exciting. It was exciting what I saw on the field, and that transferred to the terraces with a great atmosphere from all four corners of that ground. And it's been there generally for the last 60, 70 years. So the only thing you can be really guilty of, I think, as a Manchester United manager, the Old Trafford sizes, if you will, is not at least trying to play attractive football. Didn't work for Van Gaal, didn't work for Sexton, nearly didn't work for Fergie for a while. You've got to go out there and play try and play attacking football. And that's what I'm hoping for the next few weeks. I think we'll beat Brighton. There's still the FA Cup to be had, but just some good football and results in the league. And especially the way the other points are being carved up outside the top two. There's nothing to stop United getting in the top four, getting back into the Champions League, in my opinion.
Nothing except themselves. But what would constitute success off the pitch for you? Are you worried about anything else that might happen to your matchday experience, for example?
Yeah, the matchday experience in terms of what I see around me and the unitedness of the United fans that you just touched on is great. It's always been there. And a few hundred, even a few thousand day trippers or tourists won't pull that apart. It's as solid as a rock. You've touched on the stuff. I agree with what Carly and Duncan have said. The transfer of tickets, it shouldn't be outlawed. You've got to stop touting. You've got to stop touting for sure. But when I was looking for a ticket for yesterday for last night's game, when I went on seat tickets and Twickets and whatever, there was tickets for the match last night at £200-400. That's what United have got to stop. They've got to buy a handful of those and trace them back to where it came from. But when it comes to the ordinary fans wanting to transfer them between themselves, it's just a bit too tight at the moment. You're going to end up giving a sample of your DNA to get in the ground if we're not careful. Two of my friends, one of them injured their ankle before the Villa game, but it was on a Sunday. He'd injured his leg on the Saturday. He knew he couldn't go on the Sunday, but the time for transferring legitimately was Friday night. Otherwise, it was greyed out. He couldn't transfer his ticket to me. And that's got to change. That's happened 3 times this season. There is a way around that, which is not for discussion this evening. But United have got to make it that you can transfer that right up to kick-off time. That's what I'd like to see brought in. They've tightened it a little bit too much. Sorry, that's when it's digital.
The excuse or the reason, given the benefit of the doubt, that the club use for that is that it's a Premier League requirement, that they need to know that allegedly they reckon there's got to be a cut-off point where the Premier League want to know exactly who's in the ground by midday the day before a game. If the game's on a Saturday, they want to know midday on the Friday. That clearly isn't the case for sponsor tickets or Crystal Palace owners, spare tickets in the away end, but we won't get into that. But United are claiming that that's the case. Now, you might have seen today that there's a 6-day gap between the West Ham game and when you can actually forward tickets on. So the deadline for West Ham is going to be 6 days before the game. So that is clearly excessive. And the club are claiming, they raised with us previously in fans forums meetings, that West Ham are one of the clubs that have a really, really stringent procedure on that, and that they've tried to get some wiggle. Some of these problems that we're facing are bigger than just the club that we're at, and they're sort of Premier League level, things that affect everyone. Like stuff with queues and security. We were seeing pictures at the weekend of the queues outside Hill Dickinson, and Everton fans having like similar situations. But a lot of these things are things that are affecting fans across all clubs. Queues, security checks, alleged, anti-touting measures that are affecting normal, everyday match-going fans. So I think sometimes when we're trying to look at solutions for some of these things, you've got to see it in the context of what's going on elsewhere as well. Like, this isn't just a one club issue. This is like a huge issue in football. All of these revenue drivers, all of these, pushes that clubs are doing to sort of eliminate touting, but to basically tout them themselves, allegedly. And to find solutions to those, we need to work together with fans at other clubs. And one of the things that Must in particular have been really good at doing is working with the Football Supporters Association. And the 1958, obviously, we're involved with fans from other clubs in the Stop Exploiting Loyalty campaign last season. But I think, we speak a lot about the solidarity that we have with, as United fans, like within our own sort of fan base. And I'm not saying we've got to go, skipping arm in arm with Spirit of Shankly down Warwick Road, but definitely working with other fans groups to address these things that are systemic issues in football are definitely going to be the way forward to address some of these things, I think.
Just quickly, Duncan, then, it seems common sense, doesn't it, that what Pete mentioned about getting to the source of this touting, if that's really the desire, because a BBC journalist managed to do it on one occasion, you could do that at scale.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I just agree with Carly, and and I'd probably go further in terms of the, away tickets don't make United any money in terms of the, the standard ticket, certainly. And, they are the property of the away club, and the away club set the rules. And United are better in terms of allowing our fans to transfer tickets, and the limits are set by the away club. The away club demand the list. And what Carly's talking about is correct in terms of the Premier League, that they want a list, but the away club's the one who decides when they want it, the final list, if you like. And so United can't do anything about that. Otherwise, they'll be in breach of the terms and conditions of supplying the away tickets. And so I have raised this question already about West Ham with the club, but, there's a limited amount they can do. And I think that Carly's absolutely right again, that, the way to tackle this is to work with colleagues at other football clubs, fan groups at other football clubs, and ask the Premier League to set some sort of standard common arrangement for how they deal with these things so that there isn't this confusion. And it is a real problem because we don't want away tickets being wasted because someone's ill on the day of the match, or 6 days before is even more ridiculous. Sorry, you'll have to remind me, Andy, what your question was.
No, just about buying. Just Pete's idea about buying up a few and just tracing them, at least getting to the bottom of that, because that really stinks and it really upsets people.
I agree. And there's two things there. I mean, first of all, and it probably isn't the case in the situation Pete's talking about where it's immediately before the game, but what we do see is that tickets are listed on these online sites and they're listed when they don't exist at the time. So what happens is someone buys the ticket and then the person who's listing it, or the touting agency or whatever, will then go and try and acquire the ticket. And if they can, they know what their margin is because they've sold it at this price. And if they can't, the fan gets a refund. So that's one of the problems. It doesn't mean the tickets have been touted at that point when they appear on the site, always anyway. But yes, I agree with the idea, and I would much prefer, because we've pushed on this, particularly with away tickets, that when a fan is accused of touting their ticket, that there is hard evidence for this, not, a verbal thing from a fan saying, yeah, I bought this ticket and that's recorded on a piece of paper. And then the original owner is then sanctioned because somebody's said that and there's no corroboration on video or anything else. And I don't think that's sufficient to take someone's season ticket away. But if what you do is you buy that ticket through the site and you identify the original supplier, I think that is, unless there's some explanation for it, then that's the proper evidence. And the club did used to do this. They did used to buy tickets like this. And they also did used to offer this option that if you were a fan who bought a ticket like that, you could disclose the details to the club of what the details of the ticket, and they would refund you the price that you paid if you could prove it. Now, they don't do that anymore, and you can imagine why. But also, they don't, to my knowledge, significantly purchase tickets like this. And I think they should do that. I think Pete's right, because they don't have to be buying all the tickets. It's about creating enough of a disincentive so that people think, I might get caught if I list my ticket on this site for a premium. So I won't do that. I'll either pass it round to mates legitimately, or I'll send it back to the club and it goes to an eligible supporter. And that's what we all want to see, obviously. I don't know what the numbers are in terms of, these online touting sites for away tickets, but I do agree that it's a really annoying thing if you've missed out on a ballot and you can see tickets available at crazy prices. So I think it's right. I think the club should look at, going back in and buying tickets, even at, a small scale.
Thank you all. I think we've got through some real stuff there, some real detail. It's the longest pod we've ever done, but I can't end it without mentioning the sad news that reached us in the last 24 hours of Justen Gill's death. If you've been away often enough this century, you'll have run into Justen at some point. I know, Duncan, he got in touch with you to tell you he was terminally ill.
Yeah, I mean, incredibly sad. I mean, I kind of lost touch with him. We used to be in a friendship group that used to meet up through football years ago, involved through Musa, in the 90s in particular. And we kind of lost touch, drifted apart. And but he did contact me after his diagnosis, and I was very sad to hear the news that he'd passed away, because he was, you know, a really lovely guy. You know, someone that loads of people would have great words to say about, because, you know, a very sweet man and a very funny man actually, and very sad to hear the news.
Yeah, I'm going to dig out some pictures, I think, and Pete, you will remember at that point that you'll recognise his face, as pretty much everyone did, Carly, really.
Yeah.
Our age, anyway.
Yeah, definitely. Like, I didn't know Justen massively well, but he was such a funny guy. Like, when you got to know him, there were some pictures that were going around today of, do you remember the Blackburn 70s Day?
Yeah.
Which he
butcher's
was,
coat,
which he was at and got really involved in, and people were sharing pictures of like Euro aways, and one of my mates was sharing pictures of him when we were together in Bruges. And yeah, he was just really, really nice lad, and really, really funny company. And just a massive loss, and just, you know, part of that, you know, sort of the people that you sort of take for granted and think will always be around, just not being there anymore. It's just a really sad situation.
Yeah, he was part of my away going circle for many years, and luckily I've kept in touch with him for all these years. A great lad. You might have known him as Ravanelli, as I did normally, or Father Ted. He'll be missed very much in the station in Didsbury, and among a massive group of Reds who were close to him. So there'll be a full piece in due course in United We Stand. Enjoy yourself. It's later than you think.